December 17th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Corporal Heinrich Müller pressed himself against the frozen earth, his carabiner 98K gripped in trembling hands. The morning fog clung to the pine trees like a burial shroud. Somewhere ahead, American positions waited in the darkness. Müller had been told these Americans were green replacements, exhausted from weeks of defensive fighting, low on ammunition and morale. What happened in the next 60 seconds would shatter everything Müller believed about American infantry. The attack order came, whispered down the line. Müller rose with his squad and advanced through the snow. 30 meters, 20 meters. Then the Americans opened fire. The sound was unlike anything in Müller's 3 years of combat experience. Not the measured crack-pause crack of bolt-action rifles he knew from the Eastern Front. This was continuous, relentless, a wall of semi-automatic fire that didn't stop. While Müller worked his bolt frantically, ejecting spent casings, chambering fresh rounds, breaking his aim with every shot, the American riflemen opposite him simply pulled their triggers. 8 rounds. Reload. 8 more rounds. The mathematics of survival had shifted catastrophically in America's favor, and German soldiers across every theater of World War II were learning this brutal lesson one firefight at a time. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The story of how America fielded the world's only standard-issue semi-automatic rifle, while Germany clung to bolt-action technology, begins not on battlefields, but in the workshop of a self-taught Canadian immigrant who would revolutionize infantry combat. January 1st, 1888. Saint-Rémy, Quebec, Canada. Jean-Baptiste Garand entered the world on a modest farm 17 miles south of Montreal. Nothing about his humble origins suggested he would one day create what General George Patton would call the greatest battle implement ever devised. At 11 years old, young Jean moved with his family to rural Connecticut when his father abandoned farming for textile mill work. By age 12, the boy swept floors in a mill in Jewett City, but young Garand was fascinated by the machinery surrounding him. During breaks, he studied the mechanical looms, the steam engines, the precision gears that transformed raw cotton into finished cloth. This wasn't mere curiosity, this was the beginning of an education that would change warfare. By 18, Garand worked as a machinist. His natural aptitude led him to tool and gauge making, skills requiring both mathematical precision and artistic intuition. He took correspondence courses at night, teaching himself engineering principles most men learned only in universities. In 1916, at 28 years old, Garand turned his attention to firearms design. He submitted plans for a semi-automatic rifle to the United States Navy. 2 years later, the Navy was impressed enough to request he continue his work at the Bureau of Standards in Washington. After 18 months, Springfield Armory in Massachusetts offered him a position as a design engineer. What Garand found at Springfield shocked him. The legendary armory, which had given its name to the Springfield rifles equipping American forces in World War I, was hopelessly outdated. During the Great War, Springfield produced only 265,000 rifles, nowhere near enough for an army that grew from 200,000 to 4 million men. Another 47,000 came from Rock Island Arsenal. The massive shortfall forced America to arm hundreds of thousands of soldiers with British Enfield rifles manufactured under license by Remington and Winchester. The Springfield Model 1903 was a superb rifle, accurate and reliable, but it was designed to be hand-fitted by skilled armourers working at leisurely peacetime pace. Modern warfare demanded weapons that could be mass-produced quickly by semi-skilled workers using machine tools. Garand recognized that the next war would be won by the nation that could arm its soldiers fastest with the most effective weapons. The rifle he envisioned would fire every time the operator pulled the trigger, without requiring manual cycling of a bolt between shots. This semi-automatic operation would more than double the sustained rate of fire compared to bolt-action designs. It would allow soldiers to maintain their shooting position and sight picture between rounds. Most importantly, It would shift the balance of firepower decisively toward forces equipped with such weapons. Garand's path to success was anything but direct. His first designs used primer actuation, where the force of the primer explosion cycled the action. This proved unreliable in field conditions. He switched to gas operation, tapping propellant gases from the fired cartridge to power the mechanism. In 1929, his design won Army acceptance trials. Victory seemed certain. Then politics intervened with devastating effect. General Douglas MacArthur, Army Chief of Staff, insisted the rifle use the existing 30-06 Springfield cartridge rather than the newer .276 Pedersen round for which Garand had optimized his design. MacArthur's reasoning was purely economic. The Army had millions of rounds of 30-06 ammunition in storage. Starting fresh with a new caliber would cost millions of dollars and delay deployment for years America could not afford. Garand returned to his workshop and redesigned the entire rifle for the heavier, more powerful 30-06 cartridge. The process consumed 3 years of painstaking work. On August 3, 1933, his redesigned rifle received official designation as the United States Rifle Caliber 30 M1. On January 9, 1936, the Army adopted it as the new standard infantry weapon. The first production M1 Garand was successfully proof-fired, function-fired, and fired for accuracy on July 21, 1937. Production began that September at a rate of 10 rifles per day. By January 1940, Springfield Armory produced 100 per day. But this was nowhere near enough for a nation watching Europe descend into mechanized warfare. On September 20, 1939, the same month Germany invaded Poland, Winchester Repeating Arms received a contract to manufacture M1 Garands. The company was less than enthusiastic about the prospect. Winchester engineers considered the Garand too complex, too expensive to produce using mass production techniques. Relations between Winchester and Springfield Armory personnel became openly hostile, with each side accusing the other of incompetence and unrealistic expectations. Despite the friction between manufacturers, both facilities ramped up production as war clouds gathered over the Atlantic. By December 7, 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, American factories were producing rifles at unprecedented rates. The M1 Garand became an absolute top priority overnight. January 1942 saw Springfield Armory producing 1,130 Garands per day. Production peaked in January 1944, when Springfield alone manufactured 122,000 rifles in a single month. This translated to 3,936 rifles per day, or 164 rifles every hour of every day. Winchester added another 513,000 rifles between December 1940 and June 1945. By war's end in August 1945, over 4 million M1 Garands had been produced. The United States stood as the only major power to field a semi-automatic rifle as standard infantry equipment. Every other army, British, German, Soviet, Japanese, Italian, relied primarily on bolt-action designs developed decades earlier. The tactical implications of this disparity cannot be overstated. Understanding the advantage requires examining the mechanical reality of both weapons. A rifleman with a bolt-action rifle must perform multiple steps between each shot. Pull the bolt handle upward and rearward, ejecting the spent cartridge. Push the bolt forward, chambering a new round from the internal magazine. Push the bolt handle downward, locking it in place. Raise the rifle back to shooting position. Reacquire the target through the sights. Aim, fire. The entire cycle consumes 4 to 6 seconds for a trained soldier under ideal conditions, longer under combat stress when hands shake and exhaustion sets in. The M1 Garand eliminated most of these steps through elegant mechanical design. The soldier pulls the trigger. The rifle fires. Gas pressure from the fired cartridge diverts through a port in the barrel into a cylinder below. This gas drives a piston that cycles the action automatically. The bolt opens. The spent case ejects. A new round chambers from the 8-round en bloc clip. The bolt locks. Total time, 1/5 of a second. The rifle's action remains closed between shots, maintaining precise barrel-to-sight alignment. Accuracy does not suffer despite the rapid-fire capability. Testing at Springfield Armory demonstrated the M1 could maintain 4 minutes of angle groups, meaning 4 inches of spread at 100 yards. Many production rifles performed significantly better than this standard. The official U.S. Army aimed rate of fire for the M1 Garand was 24 rounds per minute under combat conditions. Experienced soldiers in favorable positions could achieve 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute. Compare this to bolt-action rifles. The German Karabiner 98K, firing the powerful 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge from a 5-round internal magazine, managed approximately 15 aimed rounds per minute from highly trained soldiers. Under realistic combat conditions, accounting for the stress of incoming fire and the need to reload from stripper clips every 5 rounds, this rate dropped to 10 to 12 rounds per minute. The British Lee Enfield, with its 10-round magazine and famously smooth bolt action, was the fastest bolt-action rifle ever produced. British soldiers trained extensively in the Mad Minute drill could achieve 25 to 30 rounds per minute in short bursts under ideal range conditions. But sustained combat fire from the Lee Enfield averaged 15 rounds per minute. Even Britain's fastest bolt-action rifle could not match America's semi-automatic standard. The firepower mathematics told a stark story. In a 3-minute engagement, a German soldier with a Kar98s firing at maximum sustainable rate would deliver 30 to 45 aimed rounds. An American soldier with an M1 Garand would deliver 72 to 150 rounds in the same period. The American maintained consistent aim throughout. The German broke his sight picture with every bolt cycle, interrupting the rhythm of aimed fire. Most critically, the American's rifle performed this cycling automatically, while the German performed it manually, consuming precious seconds that meant the difference between suppressing the enemy and being suppressed. But Germany possessed some of the world's finest weapons designers and most advanced manufacturing capabilities. Why did the Wehrmacht enter World War II armed primarily with a bolt-action rifle that differed only incrementally from designs used in World War I? The answer reveals profound differences in military doctrine, industrial capacity, and strategic calculation. The Karabiner 98K, adopted on June 21, 1935, represented the pinnacle of bolt-action rifle development. Mauser's design was legendary for good reason. The rifle was accurate out to 550 yards with iron sights, reliable in mud, dust, and frozen conditions, simple enough for conscripts to maintain with minimal instruction. It embodied everything a military rifle should be, according to German military thinking rooted in Prussian tradition. The Kar98s fired the powerful 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge, capable of penetrating substantial cover. In trained hands, the weapon had conquered Poland, France, the Low Countries, Norway, Denmark, and driven deep into the Soviet Union. German military doctrine emphasized aimed fire from prepared defensive positions. Infantry training stressed the importance of each round being carefully placed. Marksmanship was a point of pride. A skilled German soldier working his bolt with practiced efficiency seemed adequate when facing Polish, French, and British troops armed with similar bolt-action weapons. The British Lee Enfield, with its larger 10-round magazine, could fire somewhat faster, but German officers considered this a questionable trade-off against precision and tactical discipline. Furthermore, German doctrine relied heavily on squad automatic weapons for suppressive fire. The MG-34 and later MG-42 machine guns provided devastating firepower at the squad level. In German tactical thinking, the rifleman's role was to deliver precise aimed shots, while the machine gunner suppressed the enemy. This division of labor seemed logical given the technology available. Germany did experiment with semi-automatic rifles. The Gewehr 41 and Gewehr 43 entered limited production during the war, but these rifles never achieved the reliability or manufacturing efficiency needed for mass deployment. Complex mechanisms jammed in field conditions. Production costs were prohibitive when resources were desperately needed elsewhere. The Kar98s remained simpler to manufacture, easier to maintain, more reliable under terrible conditions. By the time German commanders fully grasped the tactical implications of America's semi-automatic advantage, it was far too late to retool the entire German small arms industry. When American forces entered major combat operations in North Africa in November 1942 during Operation Torch, German intelligence had prepared assessments of American equipment and tactics. These reports painted a picture of industrial abundance but military inexperience. American infantry, the assessments claimed, relied too heavily on firepower and too little on tactical skill and individual soldier quality. The M1 Garand appeared in these intelligence reports as a semi-automatic rifle of interest, but not particular concern or alarm. German analysts noted its 8-round capacity and self-loading mechanism, but pointed out it was heavier than the Kar98s at approximately 9.5 pounds compared to 8.2 pounds. The general assessment concluded that while the M1 offered higher volume of fire, it supposedly sacrificed the accuracy and reliability inherent in simpler bolt-action mechanisms. This assessment would prove catastrophically wrong. American forces had been using the M1 Garand in combat since December 8, 1941, when Japanese forces invaded the Philippines the morning after Pearl Harbor. M1 rifles shipped between August and November 1941 had equipped the U.S. Army's Philippine Division and elite Philippine Scouts. These soldiers used their Garands effectively enough that Japanese troops reportedly believed they faced machine gun fire during defensive actions. General Douglas MacArthur cabled Washington in February 1942, praising the rifle's performance in the dust and dirt of foxhole fighting on Bataan. By the time German forces faced Americans in North Africa, the M1 Garand had proven itself through nearly a year of brutal jungle combat against determined Japanese infantry. The reality encountered on North African plains shattered German assumptions with brutal efficiency. German units established defensive positions, expecting to stop American advances with disciplined aimed fire, as they had stopped so many attacks before. When Americans assaulted these positions, the volume of return fire was overwhelming. Not machine gun fire, which Germans expected and knew how to handle through tactical training. This was rifle fire, continuous, sustained rifle fire that didn't pause. German soldiers would fire, work the bolt, reacquire the target, fire again, perhaps 15 rounds per minute from the best trained soldiers. But each American rifleman opposite them was firing 30 to 40 rounds per minute, maintaining accurate fire throughout. Germans could not suppress them with bolt-action rifles. Every time German soldiers raised their heads to acquire targets and fire, multiple American rounds came back immediately from semi-automatic rifles that never stopped shooting. The mathematics were undeniable and horrifying. In a 2-minute engagement, a German soldier with a Kar98s might fire 30 aimed rounds if he was exceptionally well trained, and the tactical situation permitted sustained fire. An American with an M1 Garand could fire 80 rounds in the same period with less physical effort. More critically, the German soldier had to break his sight picture, work the bolt, reacquire his target, and fire with every single shot. The American simply pulled the trigger 8 times in rapid succession, his aim barely disturbed by the rifle's modest recoil, then loaded a fresh en-bloc clip in seconds and continued firing. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic operation relied on a gas-operated system of elegant simplicity. As a round fired, propellant gases were diverted through a port in the barrel into a cylinder positioned below. This gas drove a piston attached to an operating rod. The rod pushed the bolt rearward, ejecting the spent cartridge and compressing a recoil spring. The spring then drove the operating rod forward, chambering a new round from the en-bloc clip and locking the bolt closed. The entire mechanical cycle occurred in a fraction of a second. The rifle's action remained closed between shots, maintaining consistent barrel-to-sight alignment critical for accuracy. Extensive testing demonstrated the M1 maintained excellent precision despite its rapid-fire capability. General George S. Patton, in a letter dated January 26, 1945, to Major General Levin H. Campbell, Jr., Chief of Ordnance, wrote, "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised. This was not hyperbole from a general known for dramatic pronouncements. Patton understood with absolute clarity that the rifle had fundamentally changed the nature of infantry combat. A soldier armed with an M1 Garand possessed firepower equivalent to multiple riflemen with bolt-action weapons without sacrificing accuracy, reliability, or effective range. By mid-1943, the United States Army was equipping entire divisions with M1 Garands at a pace no other nation could match. During World War II, from 1937 through 1945, approximately 4,400,000 M1 rifles were manufactured. Springfield Armory in Massachusetts produced 3,526,922 rifles. Winchester Repeating Arms in Connecticut manufactured 513,880 additional units. Production reached such extraordinary levels that by D-Day in June 1944, virtually every American rifleman storming the beaches of Normandy carried an M1 Garand. This represented an unprecedented achievement in military logistics and industrial mobilization. An entire military force numbering in the millions was armed with semi-automatic rifles, while their opponents still carried bolt-action weapons designed before World War I. The M1 Garand's technical specifications revealed the engineering excellence behind its combat effectiveness. The rifle fired the .30-06 Springfield cartridge, a powerful round that had served American forces since 1906. The cartridge propelled a 150-grain bullet at approximately 2,800 feet per second, delivering substantial energy at extended ranges well beyond 500 yards. The rifle fed from an 8-round N-block clip, a metal clip inserted directly into the rifle's action from above. When the last round fired, the clip automatically ejected with a distinctive metallic ping that became one of the war's most recognizable sounds. While some soldiers worried this sound might alert enemies to an empty rifle, combat veterans universally reported that battle noise made the ping inaudible beyond a few yards. The thunder of artillery, the rattle of machine guns, the explosions of grenades, and the screams of wounded men drowned out such subtle mechanical sounds completely. The rifle measured 43.6 inches in overall length and weighed 9.5 pounds unloaded. This made it slightly heavier than the German Kar98s at 8.2 pounds or the Soviet Mosin Nagant at 8.8 pounds. But the additional weight proved advantageous, absorbing recoil and providing stability for accurate rapid fire. The M1's walnut stock and parkerized metal finish gave it a distinctive appearance that became synonymous with American infantry throughout the war. The rifle's reliability under terrible conditions earned soldiers' trust. It functioned in the desert heat of North Africa, where temperatures exceeded 120 degrees Fahrenheit and sand infiltrated everything. It performed in the freezing forests of the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge, where temperatures plunged below zero and soldiers fought with frost-bitten fingers. It worked in the humid jungles of the Pacific, where constant moisture rusted metal and rotted wood within days. The M1 Garand kept firing when soldiers needed it most, in conditions that would disable more delicate mechanisms. The story of how John Garand created this revolutionary weapon reveals the power of self-education and persistence. Born Jean-Baptiste Garand in rural Quebec, he received minimal formal education before his family immigrated to Connecticut in 1899. Working in textile mills as a child, he studied machinery with intense fascination. While other boys played, young Garand observed mechanical principles in action, teaching himself engineering through observation and experimentation. This self-taught approach would prove crucial to his later success. Unlike formally trained engineers who learned established methods at universities, Garand thought about mechanical problems from first principles. He wasn't constrained by conventional wisdom about what could or couldn't work. When he encountered design obstacles, he invented novel solutions rather than accepting limitations. In 1916, Garand submitted his first firearms design to the U.S. Navy. The Navy recognized his talent and brought him to Washington to continue development. By 1919, Springfield Armory offered him a permanent position. Garand would spend the next 34 years at Springfield, refining his rifle design through countless iterations. His early prototypes used primer actuation, where the primer's explosion provided energy to cycle the action. Testing revealed this approach lacked reliability. Garand switched to gas operation, bleeding propellant gases from the barrel to power the cycling mechanism. Early gas trap designs, which captured gases at the muzzle, proved problematic. Garand simplified to a gas port system tapping gases partway down the barrel. This design proved far more reliable and became the basis for the production M1. The rifle underwent extensive testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground and Springfield Armory throughout the early 1930s. Problems were identified and corrected systematically. The gas system was refined. The trigger mechanism was improved for a cleaner, crisper pull. The stock design was optimized for better ergonomics and durability. Every component was tested to destruction and redesigned as necessary. On January 9, 1936, the rifle was officially adopted as the United States Rifle Caliber 30 M1. Initial production was deliberately slow, with only a few thousand rifles manufactured in 1937 and 1938. Production accelerated dramatically as war approached Europe, reaching 600 rifles per day by January 1941. The M1 Garand served American forces through World War II, the Korean War, and into the early Vietnam years with distinction. It was not officially replaced as the standard service rifle until the M14 was adopted in 1957. The M14 was designated as the official replacement on March 26, 1958, with first deliveries to combat units beginning July 1959. Full transition across all regular Army units took until 1961. Even then, M1 Garands remained in service with Reserve and National Guard units well into the 1970s, a testament to the design's enduring effectiveness and reliability. The psychological impact of the M1 Garand on German soldiers manifested in profound and demoralizing ways. The weapon represented technological superiority that contradicted everything they had been taught about American military capabilities through years of Nazi propaganda. German soldiers had been conditioned by relentless propaganda to believe in Germanic technological and tactical superiority over all opponents. When individual German infantrymen, properly equipped and rigorously trained in Prussian military tradition, found themselves consistently unable to win firefights against individual American infantrymen, the carefully constructed myth of superiority collapsed. The experience was psychologically devastating for soldiers whose entire worldview rested on assumptions of German excellence. After World War II ended, detailed operational studies of small unit actions consistently showed American infantry inflicting disproportionate casualties in firefights relative to force ratios. The rifle each soldier carried made measurable, quantifiable difference in combat effectiveness that statisticians could document. American casualties from German rifle fire were proportionally lower than casualties. German forces suffered from American rifle fire, another clear indicator of the M1's combat superiority. German attempts to compensate through superior tactics, better positioning, and exploitation of terrain worked only partially and temporarily. Tactical excellence could offset technological disadvantage to some degree, but eventually the sheer volume of accurate aimed fire from American infantry would find targets, suppress defensive positions, and enable American maneuver elements to close with and destroy German positions through combined arms coordination. The M1 Garand's legacy extends far beyond World War II into modern firearms development and military doctrine. The fundamental principle it demonstrated, that infantry benefit enormously from self-loading rifles that increase their rate of fire without sacrificing accuracy, became foundational to all post-war weapon development worldwide. Every modern infantry rifle, from the Soviet AK-47 to the American M16 to current assault rifles used by military forces globally, owes conceptual debt to the M1 Garand. It proved conclusively that semi-automatic operation was not just feasible for military service rifles, but absolutely essential for modern warfare. The story of German infantry encountering American forces armed with M1 Garands across multiple theaters represents a historical moment when technological advantage met traditional military excellence and demonstrated unambiguously that superior, Technology matters profoundly in combat outcomes. German infantry training, tactical doctrine, and individual soldier quality were excellent by any objective measure. German soldiers were among the best trained, most disciplined infantry in World War II. But excellence with inferior weapons produces inferior results against competent opponents with superior weapons. This is an uncomfortable truth that militaries throughout history have learned repeatedly at terrible cost. The M1 Garand gave American infantrymen a tool that allowed them to fight effectively, even when outnumbered, to win firefights, even when facing veteran troops with years of combat experience, and to advance against fortified positions that should have been nearly impregnable to infantry assault. From the Philippines to North Africa, from Sicily to Normandy, from the hedgerows of France to the Rhine River crossing, the M1 Garand served faithfully and effectively throughout the war. It earned its towering reputation as one of the finest military rifles ever designed through performance in the crucible of combat. General Patton's famous assessment was entirely justified by battlefield results. The M1 Garand was indeed among the greatest battle implements ever devised, not because it was perfect in every aspect, but because it fundamentally changed what was possible in infantry combat through elegant engineering. It proved that technology could multiply combat effectiveness more reliably than training alone ever could. It demonstrated that innovation beats mere refinement of existing technology. It showed that the future belongs to those who create genuinely new solutions, rather than endlessly perfecting old approaches to obsolete problems. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The British Lee Enfield remained an excellent rifle throughout its lengthy service life, spanning multiple conflicts. British soldiers used it effectively through World War II, Korea, and well into the 1950s with skill born of intensive training. It was reliable under harsh conditions, accurate at combat ranges, and remarkably fast for a bolt-action design thanks to its smooth action and 10-round magazine capacity. British riflemen trained in the Mad Minute drill achieved extraordinary proficiency with the weapon, but it was still fundamentally a bolt-action design, with all the inherent limitations that implied. No amount of intensive training could close the unbridgeable gap between manually working a bolt and letting the rifle cycle itself automatically through mechanical action. The American M1 Garand pointed unmistakably toward the future of infantry weapons worldwide. Semi-automatic operation became the new standard that all nations would eventually adopt. Within 2 decades of World War II's end, fully automatic assault rifles, firing intermediate cartridges, would become common throughout military forces globally. The days of bolt-action military rifles as primary infantry weapons were ending, and John Garand's revolutionary design hastened that inevitable end significantly. The comparison between these two rifles, the American M1 Garand and the German Kar98s, encapsulates fundamentally different approaches to warfare that characterized American and German military philosophy throughout the 20th century. Britain and Germany relied heavily on professionalism, intensive training, military tradition, and tactical excellence to maximize the effectiveness of their forces within resource constraints. America relied systematically on technology, overwhelming industrial capacity, and continuous innovation to multiply the capabilities of average soldiers beyond what training alone could achieve. Both approaches had genuine merit in their contexts, but in World War II, American industrial might, combined with technological superiority, proved strategically decisive across all theaters of combat. The mathematical firepower advantage was stark and undeniable. While a skilled German soldier with a Kar98s could sustain perhaps 12 to 15 aimed rounds per minute in realistic combat conditions, an American soldier with an M1 Garand could reliably deliver 40 aimed rounds per minute while maintaining better accuracy through consistent sight picture. In extended firefights lasting 3 to 5 minutes, this difference became absolutely overwhelming. A 10-man German rifle squad might deliver 600 to 900 aimed rounds in a 5-minute engagement if they maintained maximum fire rate throughout and weren't suppressed by incoming fire. A 10-man American rifle squad with M1 Garands could deliver 2,000 aimed rounds in the same 5-minute period while maintaining superior accuracy and tactical flexibility. This represented more than a 2-to-1 advantage in sustained firepower at the most fundamental infantry level. That disparity multiplied across companies, battalions, and entire divisions to create combat power differentials that German tactical excellence could not overcome through skill and courage alone. The human cost of this firepower imbalance appeared clearly in casualty statistics when controlled for other variables. While many factors affected casualty rates, including artillery, air power, armor support, tactical situation, and terrain advantages, careful studies of small unit infantry actions consistently showed American infantry inflicting disproportionate casualties in rifle firefights. The rifle each soldier carried made statistically measurable difference in survival and mission success. German casualties from American rifle fire were significant throughout the war across all theaters, and the M1 Garand deserved substantial credit for this documented lethality advantage. In final analysis, the M1 Garand's profound impact on World War II extended far beyond mere technical specifications or manufacturing statistics. It represented American industrial foresight in recognizing the need for superior infantry weapons years before war began. It demonstrated engineering excellence in creating a reliable, mass-producible semi-automatic rifle when most nations considered such weapons impractical for standard issue. It showed America's commitment to providing superior equipment to soldiers rather than relying solely on training and tactics to overcome technological disadvantages. While Germany struggled with overly complex semi-automatic rifle programs that never reached meaningful production numbers despite considerable engineering talent, America had equipped its entire multi-million-man military with proven, reliable semi-automatic rifles before entering the war. This staggering advantage multiplied across millions of individual soldiers and thousands upon thousands of separate engagements, contributed materially and measurably to Allied victory in both European and Pacific theaters. The distinctive sound of an M1 Garand firing, the sharp crack of .30-06 ammunition, the metallic clang of its en-bloc clip ejecting after the 8th round, the sight of American infantry advancing confidently with rifles at ready became synonymous with Allied victory throughout the war. German soldiers learned through painful experience to recognize and deeply respect that sound. They knew it meant they faced opponents who could deliver overwhelming sustained firepower quickly and accurately, without the vulnerable pauses inherent in bolt-action operation. The M1 Garand was indeed among the greatest battle implements ever devised by any nation, and its clear superiority over the Kar98s was demonstrated conclusively on battlefields from 1941 through 1945, across every theater of the global conflict. The rifle didn't win the war alone, of course. Victory required successful combined arms operations, air superiority, naval dominance, overwhelming industrial production, effective logistics, and the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of millions of Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen. But at the squad level, where soldiers actually fought, killed, and died in close combat, the M1 Garand provided a clear and measurable advantage that German infantry could not effectively counter with their bolt-action rifles, regardless of training quality or tactical skill. That fundamental advantage made decisive difference in countless engagements, saved countless American lives, and helped bring the war to swifter conclusion than might otherwise have occurred if American infantry had carried bolt-action rifles like their opponents. The M1 Garand stands as enduring testament to what properly designed, well-manufactured military equipment can achieve when fielded to competent soldiers. It proved that investing heavily in soldier capabilities and giving them the best possible tools pays enormous dividends in combat effectiveness and mission success. The rifle served the American military faithfully for over 2 decades, equipping soldiers in 3 major conflicts spanning World War II, Korea, and early Vietnam. Its fundamental design principles influenced subsequent rifle development continuously to the present day. For German infantry who faced it in combat throughout World War II, the M1 Garand represented an unpleasant but undeniable lesson in technological reality that shattered propaganda-driven assumptions. Superior equipment in skilled hands makes profound difference in the ultimate outcome of battle, a lesson paid for in blood on battlefields across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. The rifle's influence on post-war military thinking cannot be overstated. Nations worldwide recognized that the era of bolt-action infantry rifles had ended permanently. The Soviet Union developed the SKS and later the AK-47. Britain eventually adopted the FN-FAL. Germany's post-war Bundeswehr armed itself with the G3. Every major military force transitioned to self-loading rifles within 2 decades of World War II's end, validating the revolutionary path John Garand pioneered in the 1920s and 30s. Today, the M1 Garand enjoys robust following among collectors, competitive shooters, and military history enthusiasts worldwide. The Civilian Marksmanship Program, a federally chartered organization, has sold hundreds of thousands of surplus Garands to qualified American citizens since its establishment. Collectors prize M1 Garands as tangible pieces of history that changed warfare fundamentally. A rifle gifted to Senator John F. Kennedy sold for $149,500 in 2015. John Garand's personal rifle, serial number 1,000,000, sold for $287,500 in 2018. Original wartime rifles in good condition command premium prices in the collector market, reflecting their historical significance and the reverence in which they are held. The rifle remains popular at competitive shooting matches, where its accuracy and reliability continue impressing modern shooters 8 decades after its introduction. John Garand himself never profited financially from his world-changing invention, a fact that speaks to his character and the circumstances of his employment. He was a civil service employee earning $3,500 annually when he designed the rifle that would arm millions. He chose not to patent the design separately, allowing the government to own it outright for immediate production. After World War II ended, Congress debated granting him a special reward of $100,000 in recognition of his extraordinary contribution to victory. The legislation ultimately failed despite widespread support. Garand received various medals, citations, and honors from military and civilian organizations, but no financial compensation commensurate with his revolutionary contribution to military technology and Allied victory. He retired quietly from Springfield Armory in 1953 at age 65, having spent 34 years refining and continuously improving his rifle design. He lived peacefully in retirement until his death in 1974 at age 86, having witnessed his rifle serve American forces through 3 wars. By the time of his death, over 5 million M1 Garands had been produced by multiple manufacturers. His rifle had equipped American forces through World War II, Korea, and early Vietnam. His fundamental design principles informed every modern military rifle developed thereafter. The contrast with Germany's decision to retain the Kar98k throughout World War II illuminates profoundly different national circumstances, strategic calculations, and military-industrial capabilities. Germany faced immediate existential threats throughout the war. Retooling factories to produce new rifle designs would have disrupted production for critical months, when every weapon was desperately needed at the front lines. Germany also faced global commitments across multiple theaters that America did not face until later in the conflict. German forces were scattered across occupied Europe, North Africa, and the vast Eastern Front. Standardizing on a revolutionary new rifle would require replacing weapons held by units on multiple continents under combat conditions, creating nightmarish logistical challenges. Furthermore, Germany's industrial capacity was substantially limited compared to America's continental-scale production capability. German factories operated under constant threat of Allied strategic bombing throughout the war. The combined bomber offensive destroyed factories, killed skilled workers, and catastrophically disrupted supply chains and transportation networks. Switching to a more complex, more expensive rifle design would have strained already overstressed manufacturing capacity beyond sustainable limits during total war. Germany made the calculated decision to continue with the proven Kar98k and attempted to compensate through superior tactics, better crew-served weapons, and tactical excellence at small unit level. Germany did produce limited quantities of semi-automatic rifles, The Gewehr 41 entered service in 1941, but suffered reliability problems and complex manufacturing requirements. The improved Gewehr 43, introduced in 1943, was more reliable, but never achieved production numbers needed to replace the Kar98s as standard issue. Germany also developed the revolutionary Sturmgewehr 44, the world's first true assault rifle firing an intermediate cartridge, but production began too late in the war to significantly impact outcomes. So Germany continued with the Kar98s and made it work through superior training, tactical innovation, and doctrinal emphasis on machine guns for suppressive fire at squad level. German infantry achieved remarkable effectiveness with supposedly inferior individual weapons because they mastered those weapons completely through intensive training and integrated them skillfully into combined arms tactics. The Mad Minute drill that made British riflemen so proficient had equivalent German training methods. But training and tactics could only compensate so far against fundamental technological disadvantages in sustained firefights. America faced entirely different strategic circumstances that permitted investment in revolutionary infantry weapons. Protected by vast oceans from direct attack, American factories operated at full capacity throughout the war without fear of strategic bombing raids. The nation's enormous continental industrial base could absorb the substantial costs of producing mechanically complex weapons at massive scale. America possessed the luxury of time before entering combat to develop and field advanced weapons. America could afford to equip every single infantryman with a semi-automatic rifle, because American industry could manufacture anything in virtually unlimited quantities given sufficient time and resources. This fundamental difference in strategic circumstances explains why America fielded overwhelming technological advantages in numerous areas beyond small arms alone. American forces had more trucks providing superior mobility, more radios enabling better coordination, more artillery delivering greater fire support, more aircraft providing air superiority, simply more of everything because American industry could produce everything in extraordinary abundance once fully mobilized for total war. The M1 Garand was merely one prominent example of how unmatched industrial capacity translated directly into decisive military effectiveness and technological superiority across all domains of warfare. The legacy of John Garand's invention endures in shooting ranges, museums, and private collections worldwide. Over 80 years after its initial introduction to service, M1 Garands remain extraordinarily popular among civilian shooters for their proven accuracy, legendary reliability, and profound historical significance as weapons that changed warfare fundamentally. The rifle represents the ultimate victory of innovation over tradition, of revolutionary thinking over incremental improvement, of American industrial might over resource-constrained opponents. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.